The story opens with Commander Adrian Hayes standing in a ceremonial hall on the Voltari homeworld, feeling profoundly out of his depth. He's here as Earth's representative to finalize a peace treaty that ended 3 years of devastating border conflicts between humanity and the Voltari Empire. The treaty includes multiple provisions, territorial agreements, trade protocols, military de-escalation, and one unusual clause that Adrian only learned about 2 days ago, a marriage alliance. Specifically, his marriage to a Voltari noblewoman as a symbol of the new partnership between their species. Adrian had protested. He's a military commander, not a diplomat, and certainly not someone prepared for an arranged political marriage. But Earth's diplomatic corps made it clear. The Voltari specifically requested this arrangement, and refusing would jeopardize the entire peace process. So here he stands, about to marry someone he's never met, whose name he learned yesterday, Lady Seraphine of House Valoris, described in the briefing materials as high-ranking nobility and appropriate for alliance marriage. The ceremony itself is a hybrid of human and Voltari traditions, conducted before representatives from both species. Adrian catches his first glimpse of his soon-to-be wife when she enters the hall. Tall and elegant, with the characteristic luminescent patterns of Voltari physiology, her formal attire suggesting the high status the briefings mention. She moves with remarkable grace and authority, and her expression is carefully neutral, giving Adrian no indication of her feelings about this arrangement. They exchange vows they've both memorized phonetically, unable to understand most of the ancient Voltari and formal English being spoken. They perform the traditional gestures, hand binding in the Voltari style, exchange of rings in the human tradition. The ceremony is beautiful, solemn, and feels completely surreal to Adrian. He's married now to an alien woman he's never spoken to, for political purposes neither of them chose. After the ceremony, there's a formal reception where Adrian and Seraphine stand together receiving congratulations and well wishes from dignitaries who seem far more enthusiastic about this union than either of the people actually in it. They barely speak to each other beyond necessary formalities, both maintaining the diplomatic performance expected of them. Finally, late in the evening, they're escorted to private quarters that have been prepared for them, a suite that blends human and Voltari design aesthetics, clearly intended as their shared residence. The moment the door closes and they're alone for the first time, the performance of diplomatic unity cracks. Seraphine immediately moves to the far side of the room, putting maximum distance between them. "We need to establish boundaries," she says, her English carrying only slight accent despite this being a learned language for her. "This marriage is political necessity. I understand why it was required, but I'm not expecting anything," Adrian interrupts quickly. "I know this is arranged. I know neither of us chose it. I'm not going to presume intimacy just because we went through a ceremony." Seraphine studies him with an intensity that makes Adrian uncomfortable. "You are different than I expected. The briefings suggested human military commanders would be more demanding, aggressive. The briefings about your people suggested Voltari nobility would be cold and imperious," Adrian counters. "But you seem more cautious than cold. Maybe both our people's stereotypes aren't entirely accurate." They stand in awkward silence for a moment before Seraphine speaks again. "I must tell you something. The person you believe you married is not entirely accurate to who I am." Adrian tenses. "What do you mean?" Seraphine takes a breath, and her carefully neutral expression shifts to something more complicated, apprehension mixed with defiance. "I am not merely Lady Seraphine of House Valoris. I am Queen Seraphine III, sovereign of the Voltari Empire. I hold absolute authority over my people, and I have ruled for 43 years. She meets his eyes directly. "You did not marry Voltari nobility. You married the Voltari queen, and I allowed the deception because I needed to assess your character before revealing the full truth of what this alliance means." Adrian stares at her, his mind racing to process this information. The woman he married isn't just high-ranking nobility. She's the absolute ruler of an empire spanning dozens of star systems. The briefings were catastrophically wrong or deliberately misleading. "You're the queen," Adrian says slowly. "The actual queen, and you let me think you were just nobility. I needed to see how you would treat someone you believed had less power than the title suggested," Seraphine explains. "Political marriages often become power struggles. The stronger party attempts to dominate the weaker. I wanted to observe how you would approach a partnership you believed was between a human military commander and a Voltari noblewoman. Would you attempt to claim authority over me? Would you treat me as subordinate? Would you show respect despite believing you held the more significant position?" "And," Adrian asks, still processing, "and you established boundaries immediately," Seraphine says. "You made clear you had no expectations of control or intimacy. You acknowledged this as arranged and committed to respecting my autonomy. That suggested character worth knowing." Adrian's initial shock is giving way to a complicated mixture of emotions. "You tested me. You married me under false pretenses to see if I'd try to dominate you. I married you under incomplete information," Seraphine corrects. "The marriage itself is real and binding. But yes, I withheld the full scope of my identity to observe your behavior when you believed you held advantage. I needed to know if you could be trusted with partnership rather than treating our union as opportunity for control." Adrian processes this. "And what was your plan if I'd failed failed your test. If I'd been demanding or controlling, then this marriage would have remained purely ceremonial, Seraphine says bluntly. You would have been kept at distance, given no real influence, treated as symbol rather than partner. The alliance would have been maintained for political necessity, but you would never have been trusted with genuine access to power or to me personally. But I passed, Adrian says, uncertainty and something like anger creeping into his voice. So now what? You reveal you're the queen and we just, what? Pretend you didn't deceive me about something fundamental. I did not deceive you about anything fundamental, Seraphine counters, and now her own frustration is showing. I am still the person you married. My character has not changed. Only your understanding of my position has changed. And I needed that understanding to shift after I could assess whether you deserved to know the full truth. You could have just told me, Adrian argues. You could have trusted me from the beginning instead of creating a test I didn't know I was taking. Could I? Seraphine challenges. We were enemies until weeks ago. Our species fought for 3 years. You are a military commander who led forces against mine. How was I to know whether your acceptance of this marriage was genuine or strategic? Whether you would treat a partner with respect or see an opportunity to gain advantage? She steps closer, and Adrian sees that beneath her defiance is genuine vulnerability. I am a queen. Everyone I interact with wants something: power, favor, influence. Every relationship is transactional. I needed to know if you could see me as a person before you saw me as a position to leverage. And I could only discover that by allowing you to believe I held less power than you, to see if you would attempt to claim authority over me. Adrian absorbs this, and his anger begins to shift to something more complicated: understanding, but also recognition of the impossible position they're both in. So now what? You've tested me, you've revealed the truth. What does this marriage actually mean? Seraphine moves to sit, the weight of her position and the revelation clearly taking its toll on her carefully maintained composure. What this marriage means is complicated. By Voltari law, you are now prince consort, partner to the sovereign, with certain authorities and significant influence. But that title comes with responsibilities and expectations you were not prepared for when you agreed to this arrangement. Because I thought I was marrying a noblewoman, not a queen, Adrian says. Exactly, Seraphine confirms. As prince consort, you will be expected to appear at state functions, to represent the alliance between our peoples, to advise me on matters where human perspective is relevant. You will have access to sensitive information and power structures. You will, effectively, be one of the most influential people in the empire, second only to me. Adrian feels the enormity of this crushing down on him. I'm not qualified for that. I'm a military commander. I don't know Voltari politics or court protocols. I don't even fully understand your culture. No, Seraphine agrees. But you demonstrated something more important than qualification. You demonstrated character. You respected boundaries. You prioritized consent over assumed rights. You treated someone you believed had less power with dignity. Those qualities are more valuable than technical knowledge, which can be learned. She's quiet for a moment. But I understand if you feel betrayed by my deception. If you want to maintain the marriage as purely ceremonial, separate residences, minimal interaction, symbolic presence only, I will accept that arrangement. You cannot dissolve the marriage without jeopardizing the peace treaty, but you can choose the level of your involvement. Adrian considers this carefully. His initial anger at being tested is fading into recognition of the impossible situation Seraphine faced. She's a queen who is required to marry a former enemy for political alliance. How else was she supposed to protect herself except by testing his character before revealing her full position? I don't want a ceremonial marriage, Adrian says finally. If I'm going to be married, really married, not just performing for political necessity, I want it to be genuine. I want partnership, not performance. He meets her eyes. But partnership requires honesty. You tested me and I understand why. But going forward, we need to build trust through transparency, not through continued tests and withheld information. Seraphine nods slowly. That is fair. I needed to test initially because I had no foundation of trust. But you are correct that building genuine partnership requires both parties to be honest going forward. She pauses. What do you want from this marriage? Beyond the political necessity, what do you actually want? It's a good question, and Adrian takes time to answer honestly. I want to not feel like I'm constantly being evaluated. I want to know that when we interact, it's genuine rather than strategic. I want to build something that's about mutual respect rather than just fulfilling our obligations to our respective peoples. I want similar things, Seraphine admits. I am tired of every relationship being transactional. I am tired of being seen as position rather than person. When you establish boundaries immediately upon entering these quarters, when you promise to respect my autonomy, that was the first time in years someone treated me as a person who deserves choice rather than as a queen whose favor should be pursued. She's quiet for a moment. I protested that I am a queen because I needed you to understand the full scope of what our marriage means. But I also need you to understand that beneath the crown, I am simply Seraphine, someone who wants partnership as much as you claim to, but who has been burned too many times by people who saw opportunity rather than person. They spend the rest of that night talking, really talking, not performing diplomacy or maintaining careful distance. Seraphine explains the pressures of being queen, the isolation of her position, the constant political maneuvering she has to navigate. Adrian shares his own experiences with command responsibilities responsibility, with making decisions that affect lives, with the loneliness of leadership. They find unexpected common ground in their experiences of isolated authority, both holding positions that separate them from genuine connection, both exhausted by the performance their roles require. Over the following weeks and months, they navigate what their marriage actually means. It's not easy. Court factions are suspicious of Adrian's influence. Some Voltari nobility resent that their queen married a human. Some humans question whether Adrian has been compromised by his marriage to a former enemy's ruler. But Adrian and Seraphine develop a partnership built on the foundation of that first night's honesty. He learns Voltari protocol and political nuance. She learns to trust that he's not trying to claim authority over her, but to support her rule. They establish a working relationship where she values his perspective as an outsider who can see patterns she's too close to recognize, and he values her experience and knowledge of systems he's still learning to navigate. The marriage becomes more than just political alliance. It becomes genuine partnership, built on mutual respect and the recognition that both of them need what the other offers. She needs someone who sees her as a person before seeing her as a queen. He needs someone who challenges him to be more than just a military commander fulfilling an obligation. One evening, about a year after their marriage, Seraphine tells Adrian something significant. "When I protested that I am a queen on our wedding night, I was tested